So, good night, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to another Lime Vibe Live podcast. I'm your host, Yori Araman Kemp, here from the beautiful islands of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and we thank you for joining us tonight. If you have not done so, we want to remind you right off the bat to please like, share, and subscribe to our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch page. That's Lime Vibe 77. That's LIMEVIBE and the number 77 at Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. And we would like to have you a part of our small, growing nation. So thank you for joining us again for another Lime Vibe Live podcast. Not much happened this week, except for a few elections around the region. We're going to talk about that. But first, we're going to start off with Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, pledging $25,000 to any person who could create a multimedia presentation of this year's Cara Festa that was held in Barbados over the last 2 or 3 weeks or so. So apparently Cara Festa was a huge success. It brought out hundreds of thousands of Caribbean people to Barbados to watch the cultural expression of the Caribbean through various music and literature and song and dance. And so we applaud Barbados for hosting another Cara Festa. It is the 15th Cara Festa. It was postponed during the COVID years, but it got right back up again this year, the Cara Festa. And Mia Mottley said we are going to open a competition, also going to open a competition for students, that by the end of December of this year, those who give us the best literary exposition of Cara Festa 15 will be awarded $5,000. And those who give us the best song from those 300 students that they talked to early on will equally be awarded $5,000 and the recording of that song. So, along with the $25,000 for the multimedia exposition of Cara Festa 15, he's also giving $5,000 for a literary presentation, and also $5,000 for any song that comes out of the Cara Festa. So Mia Mottley's putting money where her mouth is with regard to Caribbean culture and talent, and we commend her for that. So thank you very much, Prime Minister Mottley. You're doing a great job. And with regard to Cara Festa, it was a huge success, man. What we saw online, we were just absolutely amazed and wowed by the amount of Caribbean talent and musical talent and entertainment. And there's a lot to say about Caribbean entertainment. We are one of the best entertainers in the world. No one compares to our festive functions and our entertainment capabilities. And we just want to say that Cara Festa was a huge success. And we can't wait for it to happen at the next installment of Cara Festa. And Mia Mottley also said that she hopes that Cara Festa could happen every 2 years. And we agree. It needs to happen probably every year. There's probably too much to host every year, but every 2 years is fine with us. Let these countries, this could be our form of the Olympics. Because, the Olympics, the Summer Olympics is a huge event with the developed countries. There's a lot of spending and a lot of infrastructure that goes into preparing to receive hundreds and thousands of people to watch the various Olympic Games. And for that matter, the World Cup soccer as well. So, Cara Festa can be our way of boosting our small economies in the Caribbean by inviting people for our cultural expression and to see how we entertain our brothers and sisters and the world at large. And trust me, we think that it could go bigger than what Cara Festa has been in the past, and we could take it to new heights if we invest in the infrastructure to host these cultural shows, these regional cultural shows. And we agree with Mrs. Mottley. And we want to thank her once again for putting up $25,000 for anyone who could bring a multimedia expression of Cara Festa 15, and also $5,000 for any literary representation of Cara Festa, and also $5,000 for any song of Cara Festa 15 this year in Barbados. We want to thank them. But let's go on to some more serious matters, though. Guyana held their election this year. It was on September 1st. And from what reports have, it was very smooth and very easy. There was no violence except for an incident over the Essequibo River region where poll workers were boating by, were sailing by, and there were shots from the Venezuelan side of the Essequibo River. And so that was the only incident of violence that happened in the Guyanese election. Of course, Guyana is locked in a bitter dispute with Venezuela over that same Essequibo region. And also now, as Guyana now is becoming a global oil player, and it's the fastest growing economy in the world because of the oil revenues, we're seeing now tensions mount up as a result of the Guyanese, exploiting their oil resources. But So far, President Irfan Ali is claiming that he's won re-election, saying that he's won the majority of the seats already, but it's not finished. The votes haven't been finished tallied yet, but we have to wait and see because apparently Guyana has a system where, I wouldn't say it's antiquated, but because of all of their outlying regions and posts, all of those ballots need time to get in to be officially counted to be a part of the full election tally. So we just have to be patient. They're saying by probably Sunday you'll have the official results of the election on September 1st, and then hopefully Irfan Ali, President Ali, he can be officially sworn in again for his re-election. If you could remember, the first election where he won several years back, that was highly disputed and went to a lot of political wrangling, went to court and all, with regard to people saying that, Irfan Ali's People's Party, People's Progressive Party, was being, unfairly treated in the election results. And he came out on top after all that oppression. And he came out on top. And he put out the former outgoing president, Mr. David Granger. And just as when Ali came in, the oil revenues and the oil production really took off in Guyana. And, the former Granger administration, they did put some groundwork into it as well, but I don't think people trusted him to really take the oil reserves and the oil capacity of Guyana to the next level. And of course, they trusted Irfan Ali, and of course, he's being trusted again with the country's new burgeoning oil economy. So we want to say congrats to Irfan Ali, if indeed he did win, Guyana's September 1 election. Okay. And we also had reports of some election, fraud. Apparently, the leader of the opposition was claiming that police were intimidating voters at a particular polling station that he was at. And I'm not sure that's not being widespread and reported widespread throughout Guyana, but except from the leader of the opposition, Aubrey North. And so we just want to say thank God Guyana got through a peaceful election. Because everyone's watching Guyana right now. Like I mentioned before, it's the fastest growing economy in the world as a result of their oil boom. And so everyone's watching it now, and oil companies are descending upon it. And then you have Venezuela across the border, trying to interfere in their elections as well and interfere in their process. And we just want to say hats off to the Guyanese for pulling this off. And hopefully they can have more peaceful elections. They can continue to build up their country. And that's all we want. So we just want to say thank you for the Guyanese people for having a peaceful election. And we also had another election on September 3rd. And September 3rd was a Wednesday. And we had September 3rd Jamaican elections, where Andrew Holness, the incumbent Prime Minister of Jamaica, he has won re-election already. Of course, Guyana is a bit different from Jamaica. Jamaica's already called their election. They already got all the results in because it's a one-island state. I mean, Guyana is a one-land mass as well, too, right? But, it's not as far-flung as Jamaica's not as far-flung as Guyana with regard to their constituencies. And so, Andrew Holness is claiming that he has won re-election for a third consecutive time, and he beat out his People's National Party opposition leader, Mark Golding, who conceded defeat that same evening, and he got out of the way. The results released early on Thursday show that Holness JLP won at least 34 seats on September 3rd. On the other hand, the PNP secured 29 of the 63 seats in Parliament. Holness said, "Make no mistake about it, this was not an easy victory." And he told that to media right afterwards. And he also said that this is an historic third term on his post on X, on the social media platform X. A win for you, a win for the people. That's what he said also. And so we just want to thank Jamaica for having a peaceful election as well, too. And we know Holness was going to win because, we said in one of our editorials on Caribbean Magazine Plus Magazine, we said that, Mark Golding just wasn't exciting enough. And if anyone can be almost as dry as Peter Phillips, the guy who, Holness beat previously to Golding's PNP, then my goodness, man, we knew. And then leading up to the election, Holness had several initiatives he announced. He had massive investment. We talk about hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in hotels and resorts into Jamaica that came in right before, the September 3rd election. We thought, at least I thought, that the absence or the departure of his former Minister for Finance would have caused some problem in Jamaica when Nigel A. Clark, he went to the IMF and he left, Holness high and dry. And he was a sitting government minister, sitting Minister for Finance and Public Service. And he just left. We thought that the secrets about the Holness administration was going to start leaking out. We thought that there were some issues, but no, Holness held on. And now he's still the Prime Minister of Jamaica. So we want to congratulate Andrew Holness on winning his third consecutive election in Jamaica. We wish him all the best. On to another story from around the region. We were talking about Venezuela earlier with regard to the Guyanese election, but also now we had the United States carrying out an airstrike on a boat that was alleged to have departed from Venezuela loaded with narcotics. And apparently the United States have taken a zero-tolerance policy on drug traffickers in the region. Okay? And so they had an airstrike on a Venezuelan vessel that they claim was filled with drugs. We're going to play a video now from the report of that, so we're going to let you listen to that right now. U.S. military strikes Venezuela. It's a PBS report, so let's go straight to that.
President Trump announced late today that the United States has sunk a boat after it left Venezuela carrying drugs. It is the first known military strike in the region since President Trump ordered an increased military presence in the Caribbean. Nick Schifrin's following all this, and he joins me now. So, Nick, tell us, what do we know about this strike?
President Trump said that the U.S. Navy operated against that boat that you said. It was operated by Tren de Aragua. That has been designated by the administration as a foreign terrorist organization. And the president posted this video on Truth Social this afternoon saying 11 members of the group were sailing toward the United States carrying illegal drugs. And attached to the video, he wrote, quote, "Please let this serve as notice to anyone even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Multiple exclamation points. Now, as you said, Amna, President Trump this summer ordered a large Navy and Marine deployment to the area. You see some of the ships there. A Navy official says it includes destroyers, cruisers, as well as smaller ships capable of launching Marines onto shore. And in total, it's thousands of service members, including submarines. The administration describes it as a drug mission and uses the language of war, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio did today.
We destroyed a drug boat that left Venezuela, operated by a designated narco-terrorist organization, which is what these are. And he's been clear that the days of acting with impunity and having an engine shot down or a couple drugs grabbed off a boat, those days are over. Now we are going to wage combat against drug cartels that are flooding American streets and killing Americans.
Now, that said, regional experts tell me the drug trade is highly decentralized, and fighting it is not usually a military effort. It is traditionally seen as law enforcement. So there are economic tools, there are diplomatic, political tools, and tools used by the Drug Enforcement Agency. So that is what fundamentally has changed. It is the U.S. Navy, not the Coast Guard and the DEA, taking these steps. The nature of the military deployment, though, means that some experts believe this is a message or a threat to Nicolas Maduro, the head of Venezuela, whom Trump accused of controlling multiple gangs, including Tren de Aragua, and whom Trump tried to depose during the first term by backing an opposition figure. Reporters asked Rubio that specific question today, whether the U.S. would operate against Maduro. He said, look, this is a counter-drug operation, but he wouldn't discuss any future operations.
And has there been any response from the Maduro government in Venezuela?
There has not been today to this strike, at least not in a couple hours, but just yesterday, Nicolas Maduro gave a rare press conference. He described the military deployment by the Trump administration as proof the administration was seeking regime change, and he tried to paint Rubio, not Trump, as the aggressor.
Mr. President Donald Trump, you must be careful because Marco Rubio wants to stain your hands with blood, South American, Caribbean, Venezuelan blood. They want to drag you into a bloodbath, to tarnish the Trump name forever with a massacre against the Venezuelan people, with a terrible war across South America and the Caribbean. This would be a full-scale continental war.
Maduro trying to paint this clearly, Amna, as an inevitable U.S. military effort against Venezuela, which the Trump administration says is not on the cards right now.
Nick Schifrin, thank you as always.
Thank you.
So I don't know how you want to take that, man. You want to take it as U.S. propaganda, saying it was a drug ship? That could be the case. I mean, at the end of the day, the United States has done a lot worse than that with the Gulf of Tonkin. But, anything that stomps out these drug traffickers is welcome. And, and what the Trump administration done, while it was drastic, no one's really crying about it, saying it was a break from any kind of international conventions. No, we need to have these countries cleaned up from this drug scourge, and we need to have Americans healthy and whole. It's a scourge. It is a disease. Drugs is a disease. And we want to thank the Trump administration for taking a bold and strong step against drug trafficking. And we just hope that it doesn't come to the doorstep of Venezuela, straight on their shores, where there must be an invasion, or any other country in the region for that matter, if there must be an invasion. It's getting really, really hectic now, really thick now. And, it's a shame that Venezuela went from being one of the world's top producing oil countries to now having a more or less moribund oil industry. It's being decimated. And so now they have to, go into the drug trade and the illegal gold trade, man. It's just outrageous what Maduro has done to his country. But we don't wish him any harm, though. We don't wish him any, violence, or his country or his countrymen any violence or any war foisted upon them. We hope it doesn't get to that. We just hope that, he stands down and realizes that he's not in charge. I mean, the Trump administration is playing with the region. He's getting involved. He's getting very involved in the Caribbean and Latin American region. He doesn't like the presence of the Chinese investing hundreds of millions of dollars. And, that's kind of their fault, because at the end of the day, the Chinese are picking up the slack where the United States left off after the Cold War. I mean, that's just what it is. So you can't really bully us when you stopped investing into the region. So what now the administration, Marco Rubio, needs to do, he needs to find some of those agencies that they closed down from USAID and all those other agencies. He needs to find a way to get money flowing back, or investment flowing back into the Caribbean and Latin American area. There are billionaire companies in the United States that can do a lot with regard to development in the Caribbean and the Latin American region. So you can't really blame China when they're coming and spending hundreds of millions of your money, because they've bought up a lot of your debt in America to spend on us. And that's okay. We welcome the Chinese investment as well. So now, if you want to really fight China, you have to spend money, America. You want to fight China? I don't particularly welcome the Chinese input into the region, because I think at least it's things just like this, and making up excuses to go to and invade and destabilize countries in the region. We see this happening. We know this was going to happen. We saw it happening. It wasn't going to be Trump. It was going to be someone else. It was going to be a Democratic president. It was going to be Kamala Harris. Trust me with that. Trust me when I say if it wasn't Donald Trump, it was going to be a Democratic president, whether it was Kamala Harris or somebody else. This is American policy here. And so we need to take care of ourselves and get right. Get right with the United States, as well as still be friends with our Chinese partners. But let's not let the Chinese use our countries as espionage, linchpin, or launch pad into the United States. That would be very disloyal. And that's exactly what you do. Man, we have resorts and we have investment, Chinese investments, opposite from the U.S. embassies in these various countries. And we don't even know what's happening, man. We allowing it to happen, being disloyal to our United States partners. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace, man. It's a disgrace. It's very disloyal. After all the United States has done for us and kept us in, good stead, and safe and peaceful. And that's how you repay them. That's how you repay our American friends. It's a disgrace, man. But Maduro responded by having some warships and some airstrikes, some airplanes, some F-16 fly over the U.S. Navy that's stationed in the Caribbean region. Let's go to Deutsche Welle report and let's hear about that too.
Now, the Pentagon says 2 Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets flew near a U.S. Navy vessel in international waters Thursday in a, quote, highly provocative move. This marks a new escalation in the two countries' standoff over Washington's Caribbean deployment. During a trip to neighboring Ecuador on Thursday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio underlined the U.S.'s increasingly aggressive stance towards Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro.
Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker. in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice. We're not just going to hunt for drug dealers with the little fast boats and say, oh, let's try to arrest him. No, the president has said he wants to wage war on these groups because they've been waging war on us for 30 years and no one has responded. But there's no need to do that in many cases with the friendly governments, because the friendly governments are going to help us. They may do it themselves, and we'll help them do it.
In Caracas, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says imperialism is launching a new attack that is aimed at regime change. He insists his country will stand firm, but he will be relying on China for help.
A speedboat in international waters hit by a US airstrike. The Trump administration claims, without providing evidence, that the boat was being used to smuggle drugs. It is the first attack by US forces since their deployment in the Caribbean, just outside Venezuela's territorial waters. The White House says their goal is to combat threats from drug cartels, which the Trump administration claims are being run by Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Caracas has responded by deploying troops along the coast and urging millions to join the militia.
In response to maximum military pressure, we have declared maximum readiness for the defense of Venezuela. In the face of maximum pressure, maximum readiness.
Caught in a sudden standoff with the US, Maduro has been keen to emphasize his relationship with other powerful countries. Top of that list is the main US rival, China. Venezuela has become reliant on Chinese support after years of economic mismanagement and US sanctions. But their relationship is not an equal one. With hyperinflation rising and millions of Venezuelans facing food insecurity, the economy is vastly dependent on oil exports. In June and July of this year, over 90% of those were destined for China. But Venezuelan petroleum was estimated to make up only around 5% of China's total oil imports in the same period. Beijing has also lent Maduro's government around $60 billion to help prop up the economy, more than it has lent to the rest of the continent combined. While this makes Venezuela a useful strategic and trade partner for Beijing, it makes China vitally important for Caracas. As tensions with the US rise, Maduro has tried to emphasize his relationship with Xi Jinping, showing off a supposedly unhackable phone gifted to him by the Chinese president. And China has responded to the US deployment in the Caribbean, saying they oppose the use or threat of force in international relations and the interference of external forces in Venezuela's internal affairs under any pretext. But just how China would react to any direct conflict between the US and Venezuela remains, for now, unclear.
And I'm joined here in the studio by DW correspondent Oscar Schlenker, who reported for a very long time in Venezuela. You're actually from Venezuela as well. Oscar, the question we're asking, I guess.
So there you have it, man. Maduro is standing firm. He's inviting the militia to get active in the event of a possible invasion by the United States. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that airstrike is probably the furthest it's going to happen. We just hope that it doesn't happen with civilians in Venezuela just taking regular trips or using regular pleasure craft to sail around South America or say the Caribbean Sea. We hope that innocent people aren't involved in all of this, whether it be people from the other Caribbean countries or Latin American countries who may be hit by accident and get involved in this by accident. And so we just want to continually hope that peace comes through. But as you saw the report as well, that Venezuela has been cozying up to China, and that is the United States' main rival, and they see China as a threat. And so if Maduro is going to continue along that line, then the United States is going to continually ratchet up the pressure. And that's just how it is, man. That's just a geopolitical issue. That's why I don't see why any Caribbean country want to get involved in the Chinese and United States standoff. I don't see why you want to get involved in that. You must be very judicious in this. Yes, we want Chinese investment. However, you can't have the investment at risk of American diplomatic and commercial interests. You just can't do it. You have to be wise with this, man. Let's listen to the rest of the DW Deutsche Welle report.
we're seeing these tensions ratchet up between the United States and Venezuela. What could China's response potentially be if this were to break out into a direct conflict?
Well, I think China knows that Venezuela is a very strategic geopolitical partner in the region. It's the one that's received the most financial help from China. But China has also noticed that a lot of those projects that it has done in Venezuela have not been completed because of corruption and mishandlement of those funds. We didn't see a direct quote from Xi Jinping himself on this matter, but on a foreign political envoy. So it would be very difficult to say what China would do in this situation. I think they would also talk about a little bit of interference in terms of their relationship with Taiwan and the U.S. criticizing that relationship in this situation.
Yeah, could you just maybe make more of the point that you made initially about why China is investing so heavily in Venezuela? Why is Venezuela such a strategic asset for China in that sense?
Well, for one thing, it's one of the countries that opposes the U.S. in the region, and that's why it's received so much help from China financially. I think there's a debt of over $15 billion from Venezuela to China. And China does want to have that money returned or that investment seen. And regime change or a change in government in Venezuela would hinder that return that China has invested in Venezuela.
And just give us a sense of how ordinary Venezuelans are reacting to President Maduro's claims of the U.S. Threatening an invasion.
Well, I think Venezuelans are very worried because even though there is a threat of an improbable invasion of the U.S. in Venezuela, it's improbable that they will invade Venezuela. But this increase in tensions does increase tensions within the country. And Maduro's government has already said that the more they pressure the pressure they get from the U.S., the more they're going to pressure the opposition in Venezuela. And that means a lot more restrictions and a lot more persecution in the country. And we're seeing that already. So a lot of people are worried, not only because of what the U.S. might do, but what the government does under pressure of the U.S. inside Venezuela.
Yeah, and you have the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. He called the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro a drug trafficker. Is there evidence to suggest that the Maduro government is involved in the drug trade?
Well, there is a very heavy investigation on this Cartel of the Suns. They're called Cartel of the Suns because of the sun insignia that the military have on their uniforms. And it's not the common cartel that we know of that has a hierarchy like the cartels in Colombia or in Mexico. These military personnel in Venezuela that are involved in drug trafficking and many other criminal activities are like a network. And it's very hard to pinpoint who the leaders or the hierarchy is. But there is no doubt that Maduro knows about it, has these connections, either has neglected it or has turned the other eye. But there are some involvements in some directions like that. And we saw that a few years ago, his nephews were imprisoned in the U.S. for drug trafficking with evidence that they were meddling in these illegal activities. But it's not only drug trafficking, it's also human trafficking, it's also illegal mining. These military personnel are involved in a series of criminal activity along Venezuela, and that impacts the whole region.
Well, Oscar, it's fascinating stuff, and thank you for breaking it all down for us. The situation there between the U.S. and Venezuela, and of course, the involvement of China. That is DW's Oscar Schlenker here in studio with me.
So there you have it. I told you about the illegal mining in the Guyanese situation, right? There's a huge illegal mining operation at the border of Guyana and Venezuela with regard to gold. A huge gold mining controversy. It's a legal operation that's run by Venezuelan drug cartels, Venezuelan mafia. And, that poses a direct threat to Guyanese as well who live on that border. I've seen personally, videos of persons who were slaughtered at that border region. It happened during the David Granger administration at the end of it, but we've seen that. And we've seen the violence. We've seen what it does. And so we just want to say, something. At the end of the day, Maduro is playing the wrong cards. He needs to back up a bit and just, let it ride, man. You're not going to win this one with the Trump administration or the Americans for that matter, because you think it's just Donald Trump. No, once an American policy initiative has been set, it carries on through generations, through successive administrations. It doesn't change. So you're barking up the wrong tree, Mr. Maduro. And you should know that, man. I know the money is sweet from the drug trafficking and the illegal mining and whatnot, but you have to think of yourself, man. Think of the long-term benefits of your countrymen. This is not going to go well for you, man. That's just the truth. But let's start back off from the top, man. So we talked about, Prime Minister Barbados Mia Mottley pledging $25,000 to anybody who would come up with a multimedia exposition of CARIFESTA 15 that was held in the country earlier on, at the end of last month. And, it was a huge event, 10-day event that was covered by, various media organizations that saw hundreds and thousands of Caribbean people descend upon Barbados to take part in the CARIFESTA, the cultural exchange of the Caribbean. And she also pledged $5,000 for anyone who could have the best written exposition of CARIFESTA 15, and also $5,000 for the best song that could be produced about CARIFESTA 15. So we just want to say thank you to Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados for putting up the money for the cultural artisans to express how they feel about CARIFESTA 15. We want to say thank you. We also spoke about the Guyanese election that Venezuela too is also being a part of. As they've shot across the border at Guyanese poll workers, and they had to be defended by the Guyanese military. And so, but the election was smooth. President Irfan Ali is claiming that he's being re-elected for a second term in Guyana, and he's going to be responsible for shepherding the country's oil resources to make sure that the oil revenues keep flowing in to the world's fastest growing economy in Guyana. I just want to say thank you for them keeping a peaceful election. Of course, the election vote has not been official yet because they have a lot of returning stations that have yet to come in and report because they have a lot of far-flung constituencies. But it's going to happen before the end of the weekend from what we've been told. We also have the Jamaican election on September 3rd, and we had Andrew Holness, the incumbent Prime Minister for the Jamaican Labour Party, return for his third consecutive term, and he beat out his opposition People's National Party, that is led by Mark Golding, and the JLP won 34 seats to the PNP's 29 seats in the 63-seat chamber of the parliament in Jamaica. And Holness is saying that this was a good turnout. It was not an easy victory. And Mark Golding, on the other hand, his opposition, said that it was a heartbreaking loss for him. But something, we need to find a more exciting leader. And we want to say right here, and maybe that Lisa Hanna lady that they keep ostracizing from the PNP, they should put her as the leader of the PNP. She's young, she's a vibrant woman, she's exciting, she's attractive. Just put her out to lead. What do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose. You're not going to beat, Holness with these tired politicians. He's too vibrant, he's too attractive, he's too young. He moves too quickly. You need someone who could match his energy and match his likability, and that could be that Lisa Hanna lady. Put her as the leader. She may not have to be the Prime Minister at the end of the day, but just once she leads the party to the election. The PNP won't do it, though. They're stuck in their ways. We also discussed the U.S. airstrike on a Venezuelan boat that was alleged or suspected to be transporting narcotics from Venezuela. And so we don't know how true it is, but that's what the American media is saying. And we all know how we need to take the American media with a grain of salt at times. Oftentimes, they cape for the military establishment as well, too. And we mentioned the Gulf of Tonkin incident. We mentioned other incidents with regard to the lead up to the Iraq War. That there was a lot of misinformation and a lot of misinformation intentionally being fed to media personalities to spread the want for a war in both the Vietnam War and the Second Iraq War. And so we have to be very careful with this. Not saying that it wasn't narcotics, not saying that it is narcotics, but we just have to take their word for it at the time being, and let's see how this thing plays out. Then we also had the retaliation by the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro when he flew his fighter jets over U.S. Navy stationed in the South Caribbean Sea. And so this thing may be escalating, we're not sure. We don't think it's going to escalate into a full war, We don't think Nicolas Maduro is full of crazy. He knows he can't fight against the United States. And so that's where it is. We also talk about how China's at the bottom of all of this. And they may not be a full-fledged actor in all this tensions brewing between Venezuela and the United States, but their presence there has definitely piqued the United States' interests. And, they've been dragged into this, and they're going to be the proxy war for the United States and China, at least in the Caribbean Sea. We just hope that innocent people aren't harmed through all of this. We just hope that there isn't a wave of people who are just innocently murdered and massacred as a result of these tensions brewing between Venezuela and the United States as a result of China. And so we just want to say thank you for joining us again for another Line Vibe Live podcast. We hope to be back again next week, Friday. If not, please look out for our Line Vibe conversations. Last week, Sunday, we talked to our friend Hippolito Novello from Belize, and he was telling us about his trip to Venezuela. So you want to go and listen to that podcast. It's right here on our Line Vibe channel on YouTube and Facebook. We want you to go and listen to that. Hippolito is a very brilliant young man from Belize, and he was telling us about the situations in Belize and how things are going now with regard to all of the activities that's happening in Belize, and how he became a media personality, and how his trip to Venezuela was a part of, and he has a very interesting conversation with Hippolito Novello. So please go and watch that. So thank you for joining me again for the Line Vibe Live podcast. This is your host Yori Kemp from the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, signing off again. Thank you again. Goodbye.